February 1959. Deep in the northern Ural Mountains of the former Soviet Union, 9 experienced hikers vanished during a winter expedition. Weeks later, rescuers discovered their abandoned tent on a frozen slope. The tent had been cut open from the inside. The hikers were gone. Some of their bodies were found scattered in the snow, dressed inadequately for temperatures that plunged below -25 degrees Celsius. Others were discovered months later, buried beneath snow in a nearby ravine. More than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the most famous mysteries in modern history. But separating facts from speculation is not always easy. In this documentary, we will focus only on what investigators, rescuers, official records, and later scientific studies have established. No aliens, no secret weapons, no unsupported theories, just the facts. The story begins in January 1959. A group of 10 hikers set out on a skiing expedition through the northern Ural Mountains in what was then the Soviet Union. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student. Most members were students or graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They were experienced hikers and skiers. Their planned route qualified as a Category 3 trek, the highest level of difficulty available at the time. The hikers documented their journey with photographs and diaries. These records provide a detailed account of the expedition's progress. On January 28th, one member, Yuri Yudin, left the group due to illness and joint pain. His decision would ultimately save his life. The remaining 9 continued into the mountains. They would never return. The group's last known campsite was established on the eastern slope of a mountain known as Kholat Syakhl. The name translates roughly to Dead Mountain in the language of the local Mansi people. Evidence from photographs recovered later suggests the camp was established on the 1st of February 1959. The tent was erected on an exposed slope rather than in the shelter of nearby forest. Why this location was chosen remains uncertain, but diary entries indicate the group had encountered poor visibility and difficult weather conditions that day. This would become the last confirmed record of the hikers alive. The group was expected to send a message upon completing the route. When no communication arrived, concern gradually increased. Initially, delays were not considered unusual. Experienced hikers often returned later than planned. However, as days passed without contact, search efforts began. Volunteer teams, students, teachers, and later military personnel joined the operation. On February 26th, searchers located the tent. What they found immediately raised questions. The tent was partially covered by snow. Personal belongings remained inside. Boots, clothing, food, and equipment had been left behind. Most importantly, investigators determined that openings in the tent fabric had been made from within the tent. The occupants had exited and moved downslope toward a forest approximately 1.5 kilometers away. Investigators followed footprints leading from the campsite. The tracks indicated multiple people had walked away from the tent. Some footprints appeared to have been made by individuals wearing socks. Others appeared barefoot. Near the edge of a forest, searchers discovered the first 2 bodies. They were identified as Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivoneshenko. The bodies were found beneath a large cedar tree. Nearby evidence indicated a fire had been built. Broken branches high in the tree suggested someone had climbed it. Investigators noted injuries consistent with exposure to extreme cold. Over the following days, 3 additional bodies were found between the cedar tree and the abandoned tent. Among them was expedition leader Igor Dyatlov. The positions of the bodies suggested they had been moving in the direction of the campsite. These 5 victims were examined by medical investigators. The official findings concluded that hypothermia was the primary cause of death. The evidence indicated severe exposure to freezing conditions. However, the remaining 4 hikers were still missing. Winter conditions made searching difficult. It would take months before they were located. In May 1959, after snow began melting, search teams discovered the final 4 bodies. They were found in a ravine approximately 75 meters beyond the cedar tree. Unlike the first group, these hikers were located beneath several meters of snow. Investigators observed that some members had obtained clothing from companions who had already died, suggesting efforts to survive in the extreme environment. The autopsies revealed significant injuries. Among the findings were major chest fractures and skull trauma. One victim was missing her tongue, though official records attributed this to post-mortem decomposition and environmental effects. Importantly, investigators reported that external wounds did not correspond to the severity of certain internal injuries. The examining pathologist compared some injuries to those typically seen in high-impact accidents. A Soviet criminal investigation was opened. Authorities examined evidence from the campsite, body locations, weather conditions, injuries, photographs, and witness statements. Investigators found no evidence that another group had attacked the hikers. No signs of a struggle involving outsiders were officially documented. The Mansi people, who lived in the region, were initially considered during the investigation. However, evidence did not support their involvement, and authorities excluded them as suspects. The criminal case eventually concluded in May 1959. The official report stated that the hikers died as a result of what was described as a compelling natural force. The report did not provide a more specific explanation. The case was closed. Interest in the incident never disappeared. Over the decades, researchers examined photographs, terrain data, weather records, and original investigative documents. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case for a modern review. The objective was to evaluate natural explanations using contemporary scientific methods. The review focused on several possibilities, including avalanches and snow slab movement. In 2020, officials announced their conclusion. According to the review, a type of snow slab avalanche likely forced the hikers to leave their tent. The analysis suggested that accumulated snow could have created dangerous pressure on the campsite, prompting evacuation. Once outside in severe weather and darkness, the group may have become disoriented and unable to return safely. The conclusion was based on terrain studies, weather data, and reconstruction of events. However, not all researchers agree with every aspect of this explanation. Debate continues among scientists and historians regarding specific details. More than 6 decades later, several facts remain firmly established. 9 hikers died during the expedition. Their tent was cut open from the inside. They left behind much of their cold weather gear. Footprints led away from the campsite toward a forest. A fire was built beneath a cedar tree. 5 hikers died primarily from hypothermia. 4 others suffered serious traumatic injuries and were found later in a snow-covered ravine. No confirmed evidence established the involvement of another group. No definitive evidence supported claims involving extraterrestrials, monsters, or secret conspiracies. The official Soviet investigation concluded that a powerful natural force caused the tragedy. A modern Russian review later supported a snow-related natural explanation. The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of history's most studied mountain disasters, not because every detail is unknown, but because a sequence of events unfolded in conditions where many questions can never be answered with complete certainty. The photographs, diaries, search records, and forensic reports allow us to reconstruct much of what happened. Yet the final moments of the 9 hikers remain unwitnessed. What survives today is not a story of legends or sensational theories. It is the story of 9 experienced young adventurers who entered the Ural Mountains in the winter of 1959 and never returned. And despite decades of investigation, the mountains have kept some of their secrets.